And now we're going to take a look at how these promises are then transferred from Avraham. Remember, this was covenanting that was for him and his descendants after him. And we're going to watch this now, the promises as they get passed to Yitzchak and then to Yaakov. Because after all, we are now a few millennia past this happening, and we're looking at how these promises apply to us. Because we see reference to those things in the Brit Chadashah, the renewed covenant. So let's watch the passing of these promises down. But notice that the word Torah is here in Genesis chapter 26 and verse 5. This is before Moshe. We are not into Exodus yet. We've got lots of generations to get to before Moshe. And yet here it says that Abraham obeyed the Torah. Understand what he's trying to say here is, you may leave me, you may run off and do all kinds of things where you're then going to be dispersed and scattered. I will never leave you. I will always be aware. I'll always be there. You can always return to me. He says, and I will regather you. Israel did not even think he'd ever see his son again. He thought he was dead. He said, but I get to see your children. He said, so Joseph brought them, and by the way, I think this is on a much deeper level. He says, I'm already seeing the future beyond your children. That's why I'm doing this. He said, I never thought I'd even get to see your face again, but I've gotten to see your seed, and I really believe the Ruach had given him a vision going forward of the seed of the seed of the seed, which is why he's making sure this gets played out correctly. If you knew your Tanakh, if you knew the promise that was just being discussed here in chapter 48, of Genesis, you would know what Paul is talking about here in Romans 11. What is this idea of the fullness or the completeness of the Gentiles? Christianity would say, well, until all the Gentiles come in, we've got to let the Gentiles come in. But that's not what it's necessarily talking about. He's connecting this moment to what was promised to Ephraim. The solution to it comes through what? And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free from all the stupidity and callousness and wrong understandings and everything else. Yeshua tells us that in John. But the more we understand what happened in Genesis, then going through the prophets, the more you'll know what was going on in Brit Hadashah. Of course, Christianity doesn't teach it that way. They teach you to read the New Testament and understand everything you can just from that without connecting it to what it's connected to. You know why the brothers were jealous? Not because he had a pretty coat, and I know I've taught this before, some of you have heard this, some of you may not have heard this. The coat he wore was a coat of many lengths of cloth. It wasn't necessarily all colorful, but it was the coat of authority. It meant this is the one who's getting it all. It's the coat Reuben should have had. Okay, Reuben should have had this coat, and it was given to Joseph. And every day when they saw him in it, they said, our father is putting it in our face that we are not getting this. It's going to that kid. When he uses the phrase isles afar off, keep that in mind when you read scripture. That is referring to the scattered, lost Israelites. When it talks about those afar off or isles afar off, it's referring to those that are scattered. And he actually says it here. He says, and declare it to the isles afar off and say, he who's scattered is going to guard. And Yahweh shall ransom Yaakov and redeem him from the hand of one stronger than he. There's this redeeming of the firstborn back. I'm going to redeem them. Oh, I don't know. How did he do that? With Yeshua? Now, bear in mind, and I said this in earlier parts, it's not about bloodline, but it is on one level. He must call the bloodline people back. And that's why Paul says, what benefit is it to be a Jew? He says, much in every way. But also not if you're not doing what you're supposed to do, because shame on you. You were born into this thing and you're not taking it, you take it for granted. You're not taking it seriously. However, there's no hierarchy in terms of a class system between those who are born and those who choose. You are equal. Giving thanks to the Father who has made us fit. He has made us what? He's made us fit to share. If you're unfit, you don't get to share. So what does that mean? Oh, now you're talking about works and earning salvation again and blah, blah, blah. No, I'm not. Inheritance is a reward. Rewards are earned. He says in other verses, walk worthily of the master. What does that mean? What does it mean to be worthy? Worthy of your reward. Worthy of the inheritance. Worthy of the name you're claiming to have on you. Because if you behave in a certain way, you're not going to be worthy of that name, are you? You were once estranged because you did wicked works, but now you can keep doing the wicked works, but you're reconciled and redeemed because you believe he exists. Does that make any sense? Why does anybody believe that? He says, you were estranged by what you did, now you're redeemed by what you do, which is you believe, and so you act differently. Remember, belief is an active idea. Abraham by belief, Noah by belief, all of Hebrews chapter 11, by belief they did. So you want to inherit things? Well, all of this stuff is the inheritance that you're all looking forward to. Why don't you read the end of the book? Anybody do that when you read a book? You want to know how it ends? Well, it ends like this. If you are an overcomer, which is why the teaching we did call it to he who overcomes is so important, that the overcoming is how you get to inherit all this. The one who overcomes shall inherit all this. The this is what? Everything you're waiting for, the new Jerusalem, the new heavens, the new earth, all of that. So birthrights have actually two aspects of it, authority and inheritance. Normally, both of these things went to the same person. All of the authority and all of the wealth. But what we see happening here is that the inheritance goes to Ephraim, but the authority goes to Judah.